Websites have become more vulnerable to security breaches in today's environment. My guest today is Maxwell Burkell, technology consultants, and we're going to share some insights with you on how to keep your website safe. Welcome again, Max. Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So I know my sites got hacked earlier this year. At the beginning of the year, I was hacked, and it was quite a challenge to clean it up and get it taken care of. So I learned some really painful experiences there. And let's talk a little bit about what causes websites to become vulnerable.
Okay. There's a lot of there are many reasons why a website can become vulnerable. One of the probably main ones is not keeping software up to date. I'm talking about if you're using, say, WordPress for your website, not installing the latest updates, and also on the server side, depending on the server software that you're running, if it's out of date, it can also lead to vulnerability because you're missing security patches and vulnerability fixes that have been released, and so those are some reasons. Another reason that a website could be vulnerable is the human component, where like for WordPress and your admin section, somebody using a weak password or not using two-factor authentication, and also leave an opening for exploit.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I didn't have two-factor authentication on my website, and I believe that could have been one vulnerability because I do pretty much stay updated. So let's talk a little bit about why we should update our website. I have clients that don't update their websites. I have some that I do maintain their website and I make sure that all the websites are updated. Many of them do not have two-factor authentication, and I'm having those conversations with them now because, this past year's experience was pretty painful in getting the website cleaned up, and it was really difficult, and I never want to put anyone through that. So let's talk about those patches, because it is so important to understand why WordPress does these updates, why the different plugins have to also follow suit and do these updates. Another thing is to pay attention to those plugins that are not updated, that they can be breached. So let's put our heads around this conversation and see if we can lend some information over to website users or owners. And I'm sticking with WordPress because that's the most popular platform that websites are built on today, because simply it converts better, right? So let's talk about this for a little bit.
Yeah, WordPress is very popular. Part of the reason is because it's 100% free. It's open source software, and which is good. There's always an advantage and a disadvantage. So when you deal with open source software like WordPress, it is secure in that, or it's more secure sometimes in that there's a lot of developers that contribute to it. So when a vulnerability is found, there's usually a fix very quickly because, and if there are weaknesses, somebody's probably going to end up finding it. So that's the plus. The negative is that because it's open source software and it's being used by so many people, when a vulnerability is found, if you don't install the patches to fix or protect yourself, then you open yourself up because there's a lot of bots and folks with malintent that look to compromise sites that did not update, because everybody knows about the vulnerability that exists because it's open source software. So the pro and the con, that's why it's very important if you're using open source software in particular, or software that's very popular, that you install the latest updates to patch yourself, because On the internet, there's different bots that all they do is they just scan websites all day, and if they can determine what version you're running, now they know how to try to compromise the site. So it's
Right.
very important to have the latest updates. It's with plugins, especially very popular plugins. You want to install the updates as soon as possible when they come out, especially if they're security patches, so you
Yeah.
can protect yourself. If not, you're going to open yourself up to being attacked.
So we have to be very savvy when we own a website. It's not just
Hmm.
it's not just the updates, right? So we have to make sure that the designer, the developer that is building your site, they build it in such a way that makes it hard to be breached. And
Yeah,
let's talk about that a little bit.
yeah. So yeah, the developer also affects security of your website because the practices used when developing the website can lead to vulnerability, depending on how the code is written. Um, when you're dealing with a database, there's something called sanitizing your data, which is you don't want to drop actual code that can be executed into your database. These things fall under something called SQL injection attacks, where and they usually apply around forms, where if the website is not built properly, somebody could literally paste a snippet of code into the form that ends up getting into a database. Then when the website loads, it can end up executing that piece of code, which could do all types of things. Could be exposing information from the database like passwords or other sensitive information, or running a command on the back to exploit. So yeah, the development part is also important. The
Mm-hmm.
developer that you hire, they need to have a security focus when building the site. If not, that also leads to potential vulnerability.
Right. And WordPress, I know, has a modality that they expect developers to use. Remind me what that is, and let's talk about it a little bit because we've executed that on our build, and I don't
Yeah,
remember what that name is.
yeah. So with WordPress, it's called hardening
There
your
we
site,
go. Yes.
and they have an entire list of steps for developers to follow. Some of them are best practices that they should follow when installing your WordPress
Mm-hmm.
site, and also steps on the server side when they are configuring, doing your WordPress configuration, and also for the database, things like naming conventions and things like that to follow. So yeah, on WordPress it's called hardening,
Hardening. Right.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's important for the developer to at least be familiar with that or follow. If they're not super familiar, they should get familiar. But it's literally they give you a list step by step that you can follow to make the site more secure.
Right. Right. And I thought I'd slip that in there so that we're starting out on the right foot from the onset, and then moving back now towards just the maintenance of the site. Let's talk a little bit about brute force attack. And I know we started talking about the artificial intelligence, the bots that are doing this, and this is brutal because this can really take down your site. Let's let's talk about that just for a quick minute here.
Yeah, so brute force attacks they relate to usually it would be um, either a script or a network of different computers, usually controlled by different bots, where they might send a massive load of requests to your site in an attempt to compromise it, to take it down. And there's different types of ways to protect against this. Sometimes you have security plugins that can help you protect. You have also network solutions on your whoever's hosting the website can also have measures to protect against that. But the entire idea is if you see a large number of requests coming from the same IP, for example, then maybe, and it's an unusual level of requests, they might block that IP temporarily to stop the traffic from hitting the server, because the entire idea of Brute is to try to overwhelm the server so that it ends up crashing.
Right. But what I see them doing, Max, is they're actually using different computers all across the world. So you will see that same bot trying to get in with that same sign in from Belgium, from Ireland, UK, all over. So they have computers all over. So it's just not one person. And I'm suspecting that some of these computers are actually hacked and they're using them, right? And so comes back to updating our own computers to make sure that hackers don't breach our computers and use it to hack other systems across the world. Let's talk a little bit about that before we end our session for today.
Yeah, so more sophisticated efforts usually involve bots compromising different machines. It might be in an office, for example. You might have people sitting there working, not realizing that their machines are zombie machines, part of a bot network, and continuously sending requests being used to try to compromise other sites or assets. So I mean, in a situation like that, it goes back to keeping machines secure, because once a site is compromised, or somebody's personal computer, or even their cell phone, it can end up being used as part of a network to compromise other devices. And a lot of the probing that you see against your site is not actually a human that's sitting there trying. It's just different bots, and these bots, all they are just programs that they run, performing a specific task or a small set of tasks over and over, and either they're going across probing different sites, or if they found a site that has a specific vulnerability, maybe then that request gets passed on to another bot that is just trying to compromise that site. If it knows the specific software that site is running, now it knows what type of approach it can take to try to compromise it. And a lot of this stuff is automated. So it's very annoying because you see these requests coming across your site and you want to protect against them. But it comes back to keeping things up to date. One of the better solutions is to keep your software up to date. Your developer needs to have a security focus when they're developing and building your site. And then on the human side, we need to also be careful, using the right passwords, two-factor authentication whenever possible, just to make it harder, because you can't 100% protect yourself from being compromised. But you can, if you do a good enough job, and it's really not that difficult. If we just follow these different practices, we greatly reduce the chance of being compromised.
Right. And so when we talk about website security and updates, we're not only talking about, and we're talking about WordPress particularly today, we're not only talking about the updates that WordPress pushes out. We have PHP updates. That's the backbone as well that should be updated, because that is setting us up for better security. And then we need to be using plugins that are updating their codes to match that WordPress update. And we also need to take a look at our forms on our sites, the different areas that people are coming in through, signing up, to make sure that those are closed out as well, because those are ways the bots get in. So we, as website maintainers and developers, we have to be savvy and take good precaution at maintaining those sites that we're held accountable for. We're never ever going to be able to block every single thing. because we have to be real that by the time WordPress finds out that they have a breach, is because it was breached. So what they do is they quickly fix those breaches. But for that to happen, some people, were affected. But we can do our best. And so even on our own computers, we need to have antivirus to protect us. And that we didn't cover before. So on your computers, antivirus, your website, secure, your browsers secure. And with that, is there anything else we can add to this today in terms of website security?
No, I think we covered it. It's really not difficult, but it is a comprehensive solution, meaning that it involves the development of the site, the software that we're running on. A lot of sites is WordPress. On the back end, your web server. If it's WordPress, then you have PHP. Keeping all of those up to date, particularly installing security patches. And it's not difficult, but it just takes a little bit proactivity.
Yes, takes time.
And if we did that, it's just those little steps and being proactive. But if we do that, we greatly reduce our chance of getting compromised. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for talking to me on this series, Max. I'll see you on the next series. To learn more about strategies and solutions for business and life management, click the link below to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of my weekly videos. In the meantime, click this link to keep watching, and I'll see you on my next series. Thank you for watching.